Welcome back to the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Napoles and Parker Long taking you through your Saturday morning as we switch gears a little bit here and focus on the Utah Jazz. The NBA season for the Utah Jazz has come to an end. You hope that next year the Utah Jazz are pushing for the playoffs. You hope that the next year the Utah Jazz are focused now on winning basketball games. And I did find it interesting that in all the postseason media availabilities, when people straight up ask Will Hardy, people straight up ask Austin Ainge, right? Is this team's expectation to make the playoffs? They shied away from it a little bit and said, "We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, but we like what we got going on."
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to
temper expectations.
Yeah, temper expectations. Under promise and over deliver. Don't over promise and under deliver. Don't do that.
Love it. Great way to approach the offseason, because it is a super important offseason here for the Utah Jazz, as they have some really important decisions to make. What happens to some of the veterans on this team, like Yusuf Nurkic, who I thought had an impressive season before he ended up sitting out the rest of the season with a nose injury? What's going to happen with Kevin Love? What's going to happen to, I think, the biggest thing that they need to figure out real quick, even before, even more so than the draft, I should say, Walker Kessler, and what's going to happen to Walker Kessler and his extension and where they're at with the Utah Jazz. But I think ultimately it's a successful season for the Utah Jazz in the sense that I think we learned a lot about the young guys, and we learned a lot about which players can find a spot in the NBA and which players can potentially come in and make a difference for this Utah Jazz team.
Yeah, it's success is all about how you define it.
Yes.
And I think for the Jazz and for any team in a similar position to them, this season it obviously wasn't about winning. It was about seeing what you have so that you can win next year. And I think we saw a lot. It is going to hinge on a few things, like you said, Walker Kessler. Without Walker Kessler, if say hypothetically he is not part of the Jazz next year, what do you do? What do you do at center? Because he should be your starting center. He's the guy. He's been around the whole time, even though he didn't technically get drafted here. Thank you, NBA, for making that even more confusing. But he's been around the whole time. He's a guy that you have a lot of faith in. You're kind of putting all your eggs in the Walker Kessler basket.
Yes.
There at center.
Yes.
Re-signing Nurk is good. He's a backup. He's a backup center, and he's a good one.
I think
he's a good guy to have.
I think he'd be phenomenal coming off the bench.
He should not be your starting center. So try and take care of Walker. And if Walker cannot be taken care of, you gotta move quick, and you gotta move decisively, and you gotta find someone that's really, really good.
Yeah, and it sounds like as far as what we've heard from the off season, at the end of season media availabilities, I should say, from the Utah Jazz, from guys like Will Hardy and guys like Austin Ainge, is that conversations are being had with Walker Kessler, and conversations about Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. being the anchor points of the Utah Jazz's defense heading into this next season is going to be a major focal point as far as defensive improvement goes for the Utah Jazz, which they desperately need.
Yes.
I think we saw a lot of really phenomenal scoring and a lot of really good, offense for the Utah Jazz, as far as guys like Keontae George stepping up, as far as guys like Larry Markkinen continuing to be elite, but the defense is where the Jazz need to figure things out, and the Jazz is where they need to improve the most. And here is the head coach, Will Hardy, talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler being the starting points for defensive improvements.
Protecting the rim and owning the backboard is a really good place to start. The possession battle in our league is extremely important. You see different ways to attack that. There's forcing turnovers, and then there's the rebounding margin. And I think that if those two guys are together, hopefully we can do a good job of both, but it's not going to just be them. We've seen and learned a lot about it takes an entire team to protect the rim. It takes a collective mindset to protect the rim, and it takes a lot of relentlessness to rebound in our league now. The crashing is going up from your opponents, and with the amount of threes that are shot, the variety of bounce is up. So it's going to take the whole group, but those two would be a good starting point.
It's going to take the whole group, absolutely, but you do feel a lot better when you have a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler back there protecting that rim. And I mean, just from that comment alone, it sounds like this team is banking a lot on relying on essentially Walker Kessler coming back for next season, and so curious to see how those conversations evolve and everything that happens with Walker Kessler. And I think every Jazz fan out there wants Walker Kessler to return for next season.
Yeah, I think there's a great love for Walker in this community. Like he's a big part of it. Pun definitely intended. He is a large man.
Yes.
In case you didn't quite get the joke, let me explain it to you. Yeah, like, and those are good guys to rely on. Like, Tripp has shown that he was one of the best players on that Memphis team. He's a great defender, and putting him alongside Walker Kessler, who is also a great defender and, can put up a 3 every now and again, however many Will Hardy lets him have in a game, 1 or 2 or however many. You have those guys, and your basically non-existent defense skyrockets into potentially elite. And with guys like Nurk at backup center, with guys like Flip, who I think improved a lot this year, you have the potential to be a really well-rounded sort of team, one that you haven't seen in quite a while, and should be, good, ripe fruits of your labor.
Absolutely. And again, as kind of Will Hardy mentioned, it is a good starting point for the Utah Jazz to come out with a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler to be the starting point for defensive improvements, but it's got to be on everybody. Keontae has to be better defensively. Ace Bailey has to be better defensively, and I think every single person on that roster, whoever is still on that roster heading into this next season, has to be better defensively. And we'll pivot now a little bit to hear from Austin Ainge as he talks about where Walker Kessler's at with his decision to return to Utah or not.
I had a great meeting with Walker yesterday. He had a tough year of rehabbing, and I was so proud of him and how he showed up. He was usually here at 8 a.m. doing his rehab and on the treadmill and doing what he could with the various limitations. He showed up with a smile every day. We're big fans, but we've got to figure it out this summer with the contract.
Conversations like that and comments like that were made during the end of season press conferences, again, for both Austin Ainge and Will Hardy, just makes it feel like the organization has a lot of eggs in the Walker Kessler basket, and so they hope to have that resolved sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and they need to.
Absolutely.
He is part of the formula. You want to go forward with him because, like I said, if you can't, who's on the market is the thing. Like, who is a starting level center that you could
That's a great
get?
question.
In a trade, which, I mean, the Jazz have assets, so they can trade. They have some players they could trade as well, but you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You want to keep the guy who knows the system, knows the culture, knows the coaches, knows the players, is what you want. So they're going to work on it. I trust actual Jedi Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge. Like, they're absolute Jedi mind tricks from Danny Ainge over the course of his career. I trust that front office to get it done the right way because you see what they kind of built in Boston and how competitive they are. No reason to think that would change here. So I'm optimistic, maybe foolishly so, but I'm optimistic.
And you bring up a really good point, right? If Walker Kessler and the Jazz can't get it figured out, and Walker Kessler can't, end up staying a player for the Utah Jazz, what is the backup plan? And where do the Jazz go? Because Ryan Smith was on Pat McAfee yesterday, and he made a really great comment about, free agency doesn't really exist right now. The only way to improve is through trades and through the draft. And we'll listen to a little bit of what Ryan Smith had to say on Pat McAfee here in just a moment. But because free agency doesn't exist anymore, do the Jazz immediately look on the trade market and say, what big guy can we get? What center can we get to bring in and essentially replace Walker Kessler? Because the question is still out there too for Nurkic, right? Whether or not Yusuf Nurkic comes back. But just as you mentioned it earlier, it seems like Nurkic is suited to be the guy off the bench and to be your number 2 center. And I think that's a really great spot for him to be in. And a little bit of what we saw this past season, right? With him splitting time with Flip at the 4 and the 5. When Flip came in and played that 5, right? And so here's Austin Ainge talking about Yusuf Nurkic and Kevin Love and where they stand with re-signing and coming back with the Utah Jazz.
I would say that we're always balancing the on-court needs with the locker room and leadership needs. Those guys were incredible for us all year, and I thought they both played well on the court. But Walker, Nurk, Kevin are all free agents, and that's a lot of bigs, so we're going to need some bigs, for sure.
We're going to need some bigs, he says. But he also lumped in Kessler in there.
Yeah.
Which, again, goes back to the earlier point of, hey, there's a lot of eggs inside the Walker Kessler basket right now.
Yeah, I mean, and also, why wouldn't you, if you're given the opportunity, if you're Austin Ainge, why wouldn't you be like, hey, Walker, we love you, man.
Yeah.
Like,
a lot of Walker love.
We want you to be here. We want to make sure we get this contract done,
That's part of the Jedi mind tricks you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. He learned well.
Yeah, he did. How would you ultimately grade this Jazz season? I know. It's a losing season, right? You're back into a position to win the lottery, but how do you ultimately grade this Jazz season, knowing that it was a season focused on youth development?
So if we're gonna go with the ultimately limiting A to F grading system that schools employ, I'd probably give it like a B or a B minus.
That's crazy.
And so
I thought so too.
So, and my reasoning for that is we won't know for sure if this was an A+ season until we get to next season and we see the growth and development of these guys and we see how everything fits together. As I see it now, I think you did the assignment. You accomplished the task. You did it well within your means. You maybe you didn't. Things didn't go exactly as you planned everywhere, but overall, you got a very good look at some of your younger guys. Ace Bailey got to play the whole season, minus the little bit that he was like sick and injured at the beginning, but he finished the season strong. You got to look at some like depth guys and like Bez and Bang and oh my gosh, John Conchar, guys like that. And so yeah, I think like a B minus. It looks good right now. I'm kind of waiting to see the sort of proof of concept come to fruition next year. But overall, solid.
I'm about in that B+ range too. And if again, not looking at it from a win-loss perspective, but just from what you've seen with the young guys and the steps that they've taken and the development that you've seen from not just your rookie Ace Bailey, who you anticipate to be an all-star caliber player down the road, but of course guys like Cody Williams, who there was questions and concerns of whether or not he can make it at the NBA level, and I think he's certainly come in and proved that he could this season. And the same thing can be said about Kyle Filipowski, same thing can be said about Bryce Sensabaugh, the same thing can be said about Isaiah Collier. And so there's just from looking at it from the youth development perspective and where the Jazz want to go with this rebuild and finding a guy like Keontae George and unlocking a guy like Keontae George, I should say, him having this breakout season this past season, absolutely from the youth development standpoint, B+.
Yeah. Would you say Keontae would be like the MVP of this particular Jazz team like this season?
Oh, he has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. Keontae George is the MVP for the Utah Jazz this past season. Because of the steps that he's taken. There was that stretch, I want to say it was like December, January, where he was putting up 30 a game.
Yeah.
And again, just him being able to unlock this new step in his game. There was that people asked Austin Ainge. People asked Will Hardy in the season interviews if Keontae George and the steps that he's taking have kind of sped up the rebuild, and they said and trying to see if the decisions to trade for Jaren Jackson Jr. or whatever was due to the fact that Keontae has taken just a big step, and they didn't outright come out and say it, but it helps your rebuild and it helps the process of where you're at when Keontae George had the season that he had, and that's why he's, in my opinion, the MVP for the Utah Jazz this season.
It definitely doesn't hurt when you have a guy take a leap. Like, he didn't just take a step, he took a leap.
Oh, yeah.
From year 2 to year 3.
Yes.
Which, like, it was incredible. Like, I was impressed from day one, because listening to he had his struggles last year. He really did. And he comes out this year, he's putting up 30 and he's really like being a leader.
Yeah.
I think like his confidence took such a huge boost. The skill's always been there.
Yeah.
Like he's always been a really, really good ball player, but the confidence to lead the team and like be more vocal and like be confident in executing the plays and leading the team on the floor and off the floor, like in the locker room, everywhere, building on this like really excellent Utah culture that guys love being a part of. It's going to sound worse than it is. I would give Keontae my most improved. Counting the leap from year 2 to year 3, I would give him the most improved by far and away. And that is what has really helped to speed run this sort of rebuild and, not set the Jazz back another year. Instead, push them forward to where next year they should be pretty good.
So you have Keontae as your MVP and your most improved for the Utah Jazz.
No, actually. So I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction for the MVP. I'm going to give you the good soldier, Kyle Filipowski.
Oh,
because he.
Okay.
So
okay.
The success of this season.
Yeah.
What was based on losing. First of all, kind of counterintuitive, but you wanted to lose as much as you could, but you wanted to get a look at all the young guys, Flip included, and you wanted to see his versatility. Now, I think we learned that he's not a center. He's not built like one. He doesn't really have the skill set for one. That's not to get down on him. He is what he is. He is a 3-4 kind of guy, and he can do it all. He is a jack of all trades. He can really do it all. And I think because he was put in such a disadvantageous position by being asked to play the 5 when Walker's out and, Tripp is out because Tripp could play that, 4 stretch 5 kind of role. He's trying to like punch above his weight a little bit, really, actually, literally.
Yeah, literally.
So I would give him my MVP because he did exactly as the Jazz asked him to do, grew in the process, and really helped give the coaches a better sense of what's going on with the rest of the team by doing exactly what they asked him to do and fill those roles that he's not exactly suited for.
Yeah. See, that's crazy because coming into this, I had it in my mind Keontae George MVP, and I had Flip most improved.
Yeah.
So I was flipped from what you
have.
I think Kyle Filipowski to me is the most improved. Would win the most improved player this season, and I know you could probably go again Keontae George there, but I think MVP more suits Keontae for what the Jazz have this season.
Yeah.
So
I have a different view.
Yeah.
But I perfectly understand where you're coming from.
Absolutely. We talked about it too a little bit earlier with Walker Kessler being one of the most important decisions this offseason for the Utah Jazz and one of the most important matters of business for the Utah Jazz to take care of. And then, of course, you have the lottery coming up in late May. And Ryan Smith jumped on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, and he talked about how the lottery math isn't mathing for the Utah Jazz. Here's the owner of the Utah Jazz and his take on the lottery.
And then you come in and you've got a world-class draft like you have this year with arguably some marquee players. And you're also, I came in new to the league. This is my, 4.5, 5th year how it is. We started out when I took over. We were number 1 in the league in the regular season. Whatever. We've got to pull that car into the pit for whatever reason. And then we're here and we go into this draft process. I'm also taking over a franchise, never won the lottery, never moved up in the draft. At some point the math's got to start mathing. Like how do you do that? And the odds, and you're seeing that from a bunch of teams. So we're going to figure out a solution. I trust Adam. The ownership group's incredible around the league. We're not afraid to battle it out. There's options about flattening it. There's options about putting restrictions in there. But the most important thing is what is the rebuild experience for the NBA, and how long do we want these teams to come in? And I think the difference this year that's probably kind of startling everyone is fan bases are actually on board for maybe the first time I've seen in history of, hey, you've got 10 teams. We want our teams to be down in a level. Now, when you go out on the court, I don't care who you are, like our players are playing to win. This is their livelihood. This is their contract. You saw that with us. We didn't finish with the worst record. We were 4th or 5th. Like, our guys want to win every single night. They want big contracts. This is their opportunity. And so that's a long answer, but I think it comes in that order where if you look at everything being categorized as tanking, it's not the way to look at it. There's a rebuilding process for 8 to 10 teams every year that are going to have to go through that. And so that's the process that we should be looking at. And the lottery and the draft is kind of a downstream effect of that.
I think well put by Ryan Smith. And then obviously the big conversation and ever since probably the All-Star break, right, when the commissioner goes in and finds the Utah Jazz for winning a game against Miami in which he sat players in the fourth quarter. The big conversation since then has been the anti-tanking rules and the lottery reform that's coming up this summer. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens as far as the future of the lottery goes and as far as the future of anti-tanking. But it's so nice that the Utah Jazz, theoretically, next season will not have to be focused on that. And hopefully the maths for the Utah Jazz this season where they can find themselves in a position to move up this offseason in the lottery draft.
One can only hope.
One can only hope. We got to take a break here on the Saturday show. When we come back, we'll jump into 5 minutes of. There's still plenty to talk about, but not a lot of time left, and so we'll break it down with 5 minutes of. Coming up next here on the Saturday show, it is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's that time again.
Five.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Only 5 minutes.
Everybody got that?
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
Get on with it.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
Yes, get on with it.
Welcome back to the Saturday show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Napoles and Parker Long here on a Saturday morning, and we jump into 5 minutes of. Plenty to talk about still, but not a lot of time left in the show to talk about it. So we'll start with the NBA playoffs. We talked a little bit about it earlier with the play-in games happening. With the play-in games happening, and you have the Hornets, the Magic yesterday. The Magic ran away with it. The Hornets showed very little fight, and they ended up taking that 1-1. 121-90 over the Hornets, and that comes after a phenomenal game between the Hornets and the Heat on Tuesday night, where the Hornets knock off the Heat 127-126. That game ended up going to overtime. We talked about it a little bit with the Amazon Prime blackout that happened during the game, but the big controversy in that one too was LaMelo Ball tripping up Bam Adebayo for the injury.
Yeah.
And you have to go essentially most of the second half, all of the second half and most of that second quarter without one of your best players, if not the best player on that Miami Heat team.
I think pretty easily. Like even his insane game notwithstanding, Bam is probably the best player on that Miami Heat team. Him going out, I think, kind of caused the Heat to lose. Like, no excuses, obviously, but just looking at it, like what Bam brings to the picture and how close that game was, I think he's the difference maker, and I think Charlotte ends up falling, and you kind of see that where they really do a vanishing act against the Orlando Magic. They're just nowhere to be seen. Yeah.
Dirty play, though.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it ended up happening the way that it did, but the Hornets move on. The Blazers and the Suns played a really, really awesome game. The Suns ended up coming back. They were on, I think it was like a 23-5 run at one point, and then the Blazers ended up taking it late, and they move on. And then the Wednesday night games, the 76ers book their ticket into the playoffs. The Warriors knock off the Clippers 126-121, and Golden State move on to last night's game where they end up losing. And I love the emotions, and I love the embrace that you saw Steve Kerr give his guys at the end of the game. And then, of course, that leads to the question of what's your future look like? Where are you coming back to the Warriors next season? And he basically responds with, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah. And
So
he said
that could be the last of we see with Steve Kerr with the Warriors, man.
yeah, and I think if you see a new coach come in, you see probably a new roster.
Yeah.
I think you see Steph and Draymond and Pajemski. And then outside of that, I think everybody changes. And maybe even you don't see those three guys. Something has to change because they just have not been title contenders in quite a while. They had that incredible run, what was it, 10 years ago? Something like that? Yeah.
It's been 10.
Quite a while ago that no one
yeah.
will ever forget, but you're not that anymore. So they do need to change, and maybe it's time for new voices in that locker room, a new perspective, new coaching, new players, so on and so forth.
Seems like a lot of the fan base agrees that it's time for new blood. It's time for a change. A lot of the comments that I saw last night after the comments that Steve Kerr made again about his future were, essentially, thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for, everything you did for the organization, but it's time for something new.
Ring of Honor kind of guy, I think.
Yeah.
Ring of Honor coach.
1,000%.
Like
1,000%.
you can't take away his legacy, but yeah, sometimes you just need a change.
So we'll see what happens there with the Golden State Warriors, who, again, growing up in that era where they, what was it, 3 finals that they made it to consecutively?
4.
4 finals
Because I believe it was them in Cleveland 4 years in a row, and I believe the Warriors won 3 of them.
That run was probably like my eye-opening moment to NBA basketball. Like that's around that time is like when I really, really started to dive into the NBA and really become a fan of NBA basketball and the product, and a lot of it has to go a little bit to the Warriors and Steph Curry and the legacy that Steve Kerr now, I guess, leaves behind with how great that team was. As far as the Western Conference goes, you'll have the Thunder taking on the Suns. You'll have the Lakers and the Rockets. LeBron, KD, one last time, maybe, possibly.
Knowing those two, probably not.
Probably not. The Nuggets and the Timberwolves, and then you have the Spurs taking on the Trailblazers. In the Eastern Conference, you have the Pistons taking on the Magic. The Cavs and the Raptors, that game live at the moment, all tied up at 31 with 25 seconds left to go in the first quarter. The Knicks and the Hawks, and then you have the Celtics and the 76ers. For all the talk that we hear about the Eastern Conference being, down and the Eastern Conference being weak, with Jason Tatum back and the way that the Boston Celtics have closed out the season, I think the Celtics take the Eastern Conference.
Really?
I do.
I think that is perfectly reasonable. I think the Celtics have had enough success that personally I would love to see the Pistons.
I would love to see somebody else do it. Don't get me wrong.
I think you're right, though. I think the Celtics have the best chance. They just seem like the most complete, well-rounded team.
Yeah.
Tatum is not a shadow of himself. He is exactly who he was before. He's looked awesome. Jaylen Brown's looked awesome. Derek White, like that whole roster, like they're so well constructed. They play so well schematically. They play for each other. It's really good. If it weren't the fact that they've won so many championships, I'd be more down for it.
I want to believe in the Cavs.
I don't.
I want to believe in the Cavs. I think that Harden move potentially does make them a better team as down the stretch here in the playoffs. But not a great look when the night before you open up Game 1 against the Raptors, the trade rumors for Donovan Mitchell are swirling all over the place. The rumors coming out of Cleveland are saying that if Donovan Mitchell does not sign an extension, they'll be looking to move on from Donovan sooner rather than later.
I would say that might be a reasonable move. You want to, if a guy's not happy somewhere, and we all know the skill that Donovan has, he would find a place somewhere else, and he probably wants to go to a not just kind of in the mix team, but like contending team. Yeah. So
if you're a Jazz fan, if you're a Cavs fan, that's the last thing you want to hear, though. Again, the night before you open up your first series against the Raptors, which we know the Cavaliers last year disappointed in the playoffs, disappointed as far as the expectation of where the Cavs were. They were the number 1 team in the East last year. They end up losing in the conference semifinals to the Pacers. The Pacers end up going to the championship, right, against OKC. And a lot of I guess, pressure for the Cavaliers heading into this season. They make that trade for Harden. The pressure goes up even more when you make a trade like that, when you go all in to win this season. And so we'll see if the Cavaliers are able to do it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith that they can. I don't think James Harden puts them over the edge. It was probably the right trade to make if you wanted to do that because of like who was available and the price you would have to pay and everything like that. But there's something about them that just doesn't seem quite at the same level of Boston or of Detroit, even in their own conference.
You're big on the Pistons, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for a kind of an underdog story. Like the Pistons for the last, 20 years, 30 years, something like that?
Yeah.
For a long time have been kind of the underdogs. They've been a laughing stock of the NBA world. So it'd be nice to see them at least make it to the finals. I think that'd be a really interesting story for me.
In the Western Conference, give me a Thunder Spurs conference finals all day, air day.
Yes.
That is a Thunder Spurs conference finals is going to feed families, as they say.
Wemby and Shea, please.
Yes.
All day. Wemby and Shea all day, every day.
Absolutely. I think the West has a really good chance of going chalk. I don't know if there's anybody else outside of the Thunder, the Spurs, and the Nuggets who really have a chance of making a conference finals. I know the Timberwolves have been there, done that, right? I don't think the Blazers have the experience yet. The Lakers, I think it'll come down a lot to Luka Doncic and his health. If Luka Doncic is healthy, they might have a chance to make a deep run. If Luka Doncic isn't 100%, I don't know if you are able to make it very far.
I think without Luka and without Austin Reeves.
And without Reeves, yes. I forgot about Reeves.
If it was just Luka and Luka was coming back at 75%, I'd say, yeah, you have a chance because, they play once every 3 days or whatever because the NBA playoffs take 2 months to do for some reason. I think they would have a chance. But without Reeves and without 100% Luka, I don't think they have a chance. I think the Rockets take this one. I'm 1,000,000,000% with you on Thunder Spurs. Mm-hmm. And either one coming out of there, totally fine with. Like going in the championship, totally fine with either one of them.
I think the only team that is, I think the biggest threat to either one of those teams right now is the Denver Nuggets. Other than that, I feel like there is a little bit of a drop off between the top three and the rest of the Western Conference field. So we'll see if the Nuggets are able to knock off. If they move on against the Timberwolves, they would face the Spurs in the conference finals. So if they knock off the Spurs, they would then make it to that conference finals. But I think everybody wants a Thunder and a Wemby versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander conference finals. So we'll see who comes out of the Western Conference. Switching gears real quick, it is draft week. It's crazy to think that the NFL draft is coming up this week, and it feels like the Seahawks and Patriots game was literally like 2 weeks ago, and now here we are with the draft beginning this week. And I think we know Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu are going to be first round picks and locks for that first round. I'm curious to see where the rest of the field goes as far as somebody like a Chase Roberts and a Jack Kelly. Are they day 2 or do they go day 3?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because like getting Fano and Lomu out of the way, not only are they premium positions being bookend tackles, they are some of the best in this draft. And Lomu's a great left tackle, and I keep seeing him mocked to like the 49ers. I think the 49ers would do cartwheels if they got a guy like Caleb Lomu to replace Trent Williams, probably even as early as next year.
Yeah.
Because Trent Williams is like 37 or 38. Like
I'd like that big, honestly.
He's up there in age. He's not going to play forever. Get a guy like Lomu. He's big. He's athletic. He's smart. He's everything you want. Fano probably going to go a little bit higher. Yeah. He's a little more like your Penei Sewell, where he's a really athletic right tackle. Where he's not the biggest guy. He's not like, he doesn't have the longest arms, which I've seen as like a knock on him that, you might have to kick him inside to guard, which he'd be an elite guard or center. Both of these guys, absolute first-round locks. It's the other guys that are the biggest question marks because they're all good players, but they're not the knockout blue chip. Yeah, they're going to come in and be game breakers on day one. Leonard Barton, Logan Fano, Dallin Bentley for Utah, Chase Roberts, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Jada for BYU. There are actually no Utah State players in this draft. I looked that up, so we'll have to wait until next year to talk about more of them. But for Utah and BYU, like, there's a lot of talent there. But how that talent is valued it's a big guessing game, and that's part of what makes the draft so fun. You could see guys like Dallin Bentley, like Logan Fano, like Jack Kelly or Chase Roberts go, day 2. They could go in the 4th round, and you'd be like, yes, absolutely. Like, because we've seen them. We love what they do. We know how good they are. You could also see them slipping into, late day 3, but at that point, that whatever team takes them, getting great value.
Absolutely. The NFL draft, again, happening this week. Everything starts up on Thursday. And we'll see where Caleb Lomu goes. We'll see where Spencer Fano goes on day 1, and then we'll see where everybody else lands on the day 2 or day 3 celebration of the NFL draft. That's coming up on April 23rd. We got to take a break. We'll wrap it up on the other side when we return here on the Saturday show. It is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Wrapping things up here on this Saturday show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Napoles, Parker Long, thank you for making us a part of your Saturday morning. Parker, you brought up a really interesting question to me during the break that I want to bring up and talk about a little bit here as we wrap things up, and it is the play-in tournament worth it? Obviously, right now the NBA playoffs just wrapped up the play-in tournament. The field is set, but is the tournament actually worth it?
So I'll field this question to you because I'm the one that came up with it. You're asking me my own question. That seems unfair. But I'll kind of couch another question in there. So is the play-in tournament worth it for you as a viewer? Do you enjoy the experience of watching the win or go home basketball in the NBA?
Absolutely.
And do you feel like it puts the best product on the floor?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the games that just happened this week that just wrapped up. We talked about it a little bit in the last segment where that Charlotte-Miami game that went to overtime was phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed watching that Portland-Phoenix game. The Clippers and Golden State was super fun to watch as well. Like, because the stakes are higher and because there is actually qualifications now to the actual NBA playoffs, and it's winner go home basketball. Like, it is when there is something on the line, it is much more fun to watch. And I think that's part of the reason why people struggle with the regular season, how long it is, and how most of the times it feels like some games sometimes don't have as much hype. If there's not, say, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing, Wemby, right? There's not a big storyline like that heading into a game, whereas you look at the play-in tournament and every game is a winner go home, and I think that alone builds up really great excitement for it.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. And what kind of prompted this question was, we're coming off of the NCAA tournament and how exciting that is with every single game being win or go home. And that makes every single game matter infinitely more than really any of the 82 regular season games that you play in the NBA, any of the regular 25 or however many it is in an NCAA regular season. The stakes cannot be higher than you lose and you go home. So I think like with the play-in tournament, obviously you can't really have a playoffs where it's win or go home. I think that would kind of be a little counterintuitive to what the NBA wants, and it means that you're not getting kind of the best overall product necessarily. But the play-in tournament to me has been a really exciting and fun time.
Yeah, I think from a viewership standpoint, like absolutely, it is worth it. As far as, I guess, worth it for, say, a 10-seed team, maybe it's not as much worth it because there's only been one 10-seed who has actually made it into the playoffs thanks to the play-in tournament. That was last season when the Miami Heat, as a 10-seed, found their way into the NBA playoffs after taking down Chicago and Atlanta. They ended up sneaking in as the 8th seed despite being 10th in the standings. That's the only time the 10th team has ever made it. The 9 team hasn't had as much luck. The last time a 9 team made it was back in 2022. But other than that, it's been pretty chalky as far as the 7 and the 8 making it into the NBA playoffs.
Well, I mean, really, at the end of the day, the best teams should be playing in the playoffs, right? Which, that idea, you could just nix the play-in tournament and just say, okay, top 8, that's who gets in. But there is a certain level of intrigue with the play-in tournament where you can have a 10 seed, you can have a Miami come in, and ideally they don't get swept in the first round like Miami did. You're kind of banking on that possibility, that potential Cinderella story, even though it's not going to work out like 99 times out of 100. The one time it does, everybody's going to be talking about it, and everyone's going to tune in more next year to see that potentially happen again, even though the odds are not in that favor.
Ultimately, the play-in tournament, I think it's worth it. You get extra basketball, and I'm all here for more basketball.
Extra meaningful basketball.
There you go. Thank you for the correction. Extra meaningful basketball. I'm here for it. Today's schedule looks like this. The Salt Lake Bees have a doubleheader. It starts at 3:50 over on 97.5 and 1280. And then the RSL pregame show starts up at 6:30 on 97.5. You can catch that there. Tomorrow we'll have a Utah Mammoth extended pregame kicking off at 5 p.m. And that will lead you up to the Utah Mammoths' first playoff game against the Vegas Golden Knights. That puck drop is at 8 p.m. tomorrow. You can hear that and wall-to-wall coverage of all the sports that you love here in the city of Utah here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Don't forget to go download the app. Don't forget to go follow all the podcasts to keep up with all your favorite teams. And that's going to do it for us here on another edition of the Saturday Show. Parker, thanks again for sitting in, man.
Love doing it. Anytime you guys want to have me back, I will be back here.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Parker Long for stepping in for Christian Esparza while he's been out on his baby sabbatical. Big shout out to Sean Croshaw for pushing the buttons today and for stepping in with Jake and Ben too, as well as Christian Esparza is out. We hope to have Christian Esparza back with us next Saturday. And that's going to do it for us here on the Saturday Show. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.